Hi, I'm Susan King. I'm the Dean of the School of Journalism and Mass Communication here at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and I am launching something new today. I want you to meet Marshele Waddell. She's a graduate student, one of our master's degree students, but so much more, an author, and we're going to talk about your book right now. This is the first time I've talked to a master's degree student on YouTube.
Well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, we're excited, and I want to make sure that everyone knows you're not only a master's degree student here, first year, but you're also a Bloomberg assistantship, which is an honor that you've also received. But we want to talk about your new book, Wounded Warrior, Wounded Home. This is not the first book you've written.
No, it's actually the fourth book that I've had the privilege of writing, and I am the co-author of this book. It came out March 1st. It's actually been on the market for just over a month now, but it's been a story in the making for a long time, several decades.
So this work with veterans, wounded veterans, is something that you have lived as a military wife and part of that. So tell me a little bit about how you saw a story that was different in today's soldier and today's family.
My first book, Hope for the Home Front, was released 3 days after Operation Iraqi Freedom began in March of 2003. And for 2 or 3 years, that was our family story of hope and encouragement for other military families now at war and facing the realities of what service and sacrifice means. And so around 2005, 2006, I started noticing changes in my husband and in our relationship as husband and wife and in our family dynamics. And I didn't know at that time if it were our 20-plus year marriage just being pushed to the seams or if something else was going on,
Because as a military family, he had been living abroad. He's a Navy SEAL. He was traveling for years, right? And you were separated often as a family.
And he served with honor for 25 years as a Navy SEAL. So we were accustomed to the whole special operations tempo, the culture of it, the demands of it. My perspective at the time was, all systems normal, steady as she goes. And my husband was sent home from Iraq the first time with a broken leg. And it required some surgery and a period of rehabilitation. And during that time, his leg was healing, but we as a family were recognizing that something else was going on a deeper level, and maybe that his leg was the least of our concerns at that time. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't feel that I had the freedom or the right to go talk about it publicly at the time. I didn't want to upset him or dishonor him. And so when I would confront the situation, it would just get shut down. And he was continuing to deploy to Iraq. He was serving as a director of operations for all the East Coast SEAL teams at that time with Naval Special Warfare Group 2. And so he was fully engaged stateside and deploying to the war front. And in an effort to just keep the peace, we decided, not to go there anymore in conversation.
And we being he and you, or your kids and you?
Just my husband and me. And about 2 years into that, he recognized and sat down on the couch and said, I know that there's a problem. I don't want to talk about it right now, but I recognize there's a problem, and I will see a doctor about my concerns for myself. And so that began the journey of recognizing, identifying, defining post-traumatic stress disorder within our family and our home. And then 3 years later, he was also diagnosed with multiple moderate traumatic brain injuries. And so these are the signature invisible wounds of these two conflicts. These are the injuries that most of these returning service members are dealing with. These are the injuries that have the ripple effect through the homes of these returning veterans, post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. And most of these veterans, half of them are married. All of them have parents. All of them impact 3 to 10 family members or close friends. So we're talking around 15 million Americans that are affected by the invisible wounds of war, traumatic brain injury, and post-traumatic stress disorder, trying to figure out how to adjust, how to transition, how to find the resources for their loved one.
Let me just stop you right there, because I think some people who, keep up on the news, which is what we are all involved in, know that something different happened, that this war has a stress level that is different than the great generation that were World War II and Vietnam with all its horror. What was it that they experienced? What is it that was different this time? Because it wasn't like your husband just went to war. He's been in military. What did you perceive? How can we recognize it? What's it like?
That's a great question. The difference in these conflicts versus the Vietnam War and previous conflicts is that more of our service members are surviving their war wounds. In the Vietnam War, for every combat kill, there were 2 that survived and came home to us. Now in these 2 conflicts, for every combat kill, there are 7 that come home and survive their war wounds, which is great news. But the flip side of that is that they're coming home with unseen wounds that are equally as these injuries are equally as devastating for families and for the veterans.
Anxiety. They're the kind of living with the stress of what you've seen. It's the conflict itself, isn't it? Isn't it part of what the Iraq-Afghanistan experience has been?
Well, post-traumatic stress disorder is nothing new, first of all. It's been around since the times of King David. I mean, it's written about in the Psalms, in biblical literature and all of that, about the sleeplessness and the feelings of betrayal and the grief that's involved for any warrior, and the survivor's guilt or the loss of loved ones. That's nothing new. And even in the last 100 years, I mean, we've called it shell shock, we've called it battle fatigue, we've called it soldier's heart. And yeah, we've gone through different generations of how we respond to it. In World War II, that generation, the greatest generation, didn't speak about it. When the Vietnam veterans came home, their experience was very unique as well, and they are still recovering from how they were received or not received back into civilian life here. And now we have a whole generation, 12 years of war now, nearly 12 years. And not only are they surviving their wounds, but we live in a generation of communication. We live in a generation where we express more of what we are experiencing through the different social media platforms that we have, through the blogging, through the tweeting, the Facebook, and the opportunity to give voice to what war is really like and what war is like when it comes home. So, not only are they surviving their wounds, but now they have some platforms to tell their stories, and their family members have platforms to tell their stories.
And there is such a home front, because this is a 12-year war.
Yes.
Just as you said that, it's like, oh my goodness, 12 years. I mean, we didn't fight that long in World War II.
Right. This is the longest period of war that our nation has ever experienced.
So you, as a writer, a journalist undergrad, wrote these books. Tell me how you came to say, I need to write the books to share this with others.
Well, before they were books, they were just personal journals. And it was my way of expressing what was going on in my heart and what I observed going on in the lives of other women on similar journeys. And then in the mid-2000s, or around 2006, I wrote an article that was published in a women's magazine about what was unfolding on our home front with what I thought was post-traumatic stress disorder. And the response was just amazing. I realized that I wasn't alone, that there were many, many, many other families dealing with this as well.
So you needed to share that and also connect people, which is the great journalists, kind of.
Right.
That's what projects journalists.
And I
right?
also felt that being a little bit further down the road in this journey, we had been married 20 plus years at that time, and the families that were facing their first real deployments were, 20, 21, 25 years old. They're early in their journey, and I sincerely wanted to encourage them of what realistically they were going to face, but to express that in a way that would give them hope and join them, make their relationships stronger and give them more hope for the journey.
So you then also go on your own journey to get a
Right.
master's degree in communication at this time of incredible dislocation and change in the industry.
Yes.
You're a pretty brave woman.
Thank you.
What drew you to do this next step in your education?
I was born and raised in Chapel Hill. I was born right over here in the hospital on campus. Chapel Hill is in my blood, just like the Veterans Memorial has a little plaque there that Chapel Hill is in my blood, just like the pebbles in my shoe. It was in my heart this whole time at some point to go to graduate school, and the dream was to go to UNC. And so I went for it, and the dream was offered to me, and it came together. So here I am.
And things have changed a lot since you got your undergraduate degree.
Yes. 30 years have passed, and the entire industry of journalism has evolved. That's partly why I'm here. I want to learn how it's evolved, and I want to re-engage and continue to communicate with the skills that I've been given and entrusted with in the way that works for this generation.
So, not quite a year into it, are there opportunities, do you think, now in kind of Twitter world, 140 characters, it's not like a great book like this that you sit and absorb. What are the opportunities for someone who is also now focused on the home front and has a kind of career in that world? What do you see as the positives, or maybe the negatives, at this moment of dislocation?
Well, like I said, most of these home fronts are young home fronts, and they communicate through social media platforms. They communicate through Facebook, their smartphones, their Twitter accounts. So in order to effectively reach these communities, we at Hope for the Home Front need to understand how to manage those online communities effectively.
And so are you finding that? Are you finding that the social media is the most important thing you want to explore? How are you thinking about new communities even? Because journalism has always defined those communities.
Right. Well, my interests here include learning how to manage those online communities and learning how to communicate with a generation that has grown up with living online.
Yeah.
I'm also interested in equipping nonprofit organizations with cause-related marketing skills, to where they can learn how to merge their message and their assets with for-profit groups in a more effective way to accomplish some objectives and affect behavior in the health arena. So I'm learning how to do both and learning how to communicate to those nonprofit organizations, specifically faith-based ones.
And that's what I find always exciting about you, because we've obviously talked, in the halls, et cetera. You see a really wide open opportunity for yourself at maybe the third phase of your young woman, a mom.
Go ahead,
who
say
started
it.
doing it.
Older woman.
No, I don't go there. I mean, you've got 40 years probably ahead of you.
So.
What do you do with those times? You're going back to figure out a really changed environment and your role as a communicator in it, right?
I am deeply grateful to the UNC J School for recognizing that a woman or a person at this point in life still has a lot of potential and a lot to still say, but to learn how to say it and through what media to say it. So thank you.
And what would you say is the biggest story you want to share with people on the home front? Do you think this is the work for the rest of your life, home front kind of activities, or do you think you have another phase?
We at Hope for the Home Front are grooming and mentoring and coaching a core team of emerging leaders who these women are wives of wounded warriors in their 20s. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we want to pass that torch of leadership off to several of them. And I haven't defined what's ahead for me exactly, but it will involve language, it will involve media, it will involve technology, and I am honored to take UNC with me in that journey.
And I hope lots of people who are watching this are going to say, I'm going to do that too, because learning is a lifelong, kind of occupation, and our opportunities are only limited by our imagination.
Right.
And UNC is full of imagination and talent and skill and opportunity. And I think you see that in Marshele Waddell. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing a little bit of this journey. And Wounded Warrior, Wounded Home. The story is still going to be told for a while. Thanks.
Thank you.